Sarah Riley, and I'm a pre-sales engineer at Sitecore, and I work specifically on CDP and Personalize. And what we talk about today is performance measurement. So performance measurement is kind of like, people management. A lot of people think they know how to do it, but not a lot of people do it very well. And the way I'm going to go through this is I'm going to start with a use case, and I'm going to walk you through all the different steps of performance measurement and how you can basically do that using Sitecore Personalize. So to start off with, I want to talk about some facts and figures. So at the moment, 80% of the customers using Sitecore Personalize are running an A/B test now. Not they ran an A/B test sometime 2 years ago. Today, as of March 2022, they are running an A/B test. The second thing is to hit the ground running. Our typical customers, and they are those that fall into that 80%, run about 15 A/B tests in their first 12 months. So once they literally start working with this, they're really getting up and running very, very quickly. And just to talk about that other 20%, in case you're interested, these are usually either people that potentially they haven't got their website up and running, maybe they're using this for just some operational stuff, like, affordability checks or something like that. So they're not doing any A/B testing at all. The next thing then is fit for scale. So we have customers that run a lot of A/B tests, like they run 50 in a year, okay? And the last thing then is about impactful results. So the first one here is 26% relative uplift on conversions. So the word relative uplift is going to come up a lot in this presentation. And just to talk about this now, this means, let's say we had a conversion of 10%, a 26% uplift is going to 12.6%, okay? That might not sound like a lot, but depending on the average order value of that customer and how many customers they have on their site, that can be a huge revenue turnaround for them. There's some other percentages here like revenue uplift, uplift in logins and signups, and again, relative uplift in click-through rate on homepage personalization. These are some of the things that people are actually doing with Sitecore Personalize as of right now. The next thing is when I'm running through this presentation, I'm going to be talking about it in terms of build, measure, and learn. Concepts which you're probably all very familiar with. So I'll start with how you build it, and I'll talk about how you measure it, and then I'll go into learn. Build, you're obviously all very familiar with. This is just literally how do I set this up, what are my requirements, etc., etc. Measure is the focus of performance measurement, obviously. So I think when a lot of people think about A/B testing or performance measurement, they think about, green one, blue one, which one's going to perform better. That's not really the kind of measurement that we focus on in Personalize, Sitecore Personalize. We focus on, you built something, was that of value? Okay, what was the return of investment on that thing that you actually built? That is the main focus of when we run this. And the final thing then is learn. So obviously, I mentioned a couple of figures earlier, around we have customers running like 50 A/B tests in a year. That's not like 50 new ideas. That is, I have an idea, I run it, I measure it, I learn from it, and then I start all over again with my measurement. So that's how they're getting to that 50 number. They are slowly, iteratively over time, getting to those high rates of conversion or whatever goal they had in mind they wanted to reach. Now, to start off with the use case I'm going to run through, this is like an example customer, they obviously don't exist. They're called Jewl, and they sell jewellery, okay? And this is the Jewl executive sponsor that's talking to us, and they're saying it's really important to us that more people come onto the website, and everyone that comes keeps coming back again. Repeat visitors are really important. That's what we're going to focus on here. When we start talking with a new customer, obviously the first thing that we need to think about is what are their goals, like what do they want to reach in with this whole, what's their personalization strategy, what are they trying to achieve with us when they bought Sitecore Personalize to begin with. So in this case, let's say what Jewl want to get is they want to get more visitors, they want to get increased conversions, they want to reduce their support calls as well, people maybe are calling about delivery, and they also want to increase their customer satisfaction. Okay, it's really important that all their customers are super happy. So then what we do is we think, okay, how are we going to achieve these goals? And this might come through either and say, after we sold something in the pre-sales process, maybe like a bunch of ideas came out of that, or maybe what happened is we ran a personalization workshop or something like that to work out how we're going to achieve those goals. So a couple of ideas then come up from different employees or whoever else involved. So the first here is that maybe what we want to do is we want to have targeted advertisements, and that will increase our visitors. Or maybe what we want to do is to increase conversions. We're going to get people to be able to find what they want really quickly, or we want to get returning visitors to rejoin their journey where they kind of left off. Maybe what we want to do to reduce support calls is we want to basically get more people to our FAQ page so that they're not calling up support or whatever. And the final thing then, to increase customer satisfaction, we're first going to get some feedback. So then the next thing is, what should we build based on these? The first one, what we'll do is to reach that goal there. We're going to basically do paid media campaigns, maybe to get customers to find what they're looking for, like a product recommender, maybe to get customers to continue their journey, we'll have a recent search banner. Then we can have an FAQ nudge for the support calls, and finally feedback. So you can see here as well, it's not all about increasing conversions. You know, when you're doing measurement, it can be about a multitude of different things. So depending on what is valuable to that customer, there could be a number of different things that you're trying to achieve and build here. The next thing then is obviously, these basically fit into what are your goal, what is your hypothesis, and then what is the use case. So at the bottom here, the actual idea is the use case. In the middle here, how you're going to achieve that goal is your hypothesis. And finally at the top is obviously the goal. So with the hypothesis, if you're working with a customer and they're finding it very difficult to articulate what their hypothesis is, it probably means you're going to have a very hard time designing an A/B test, okay? Because sometimes what they're doing is the two variants might be going towards two completely different goals. They could literally be apples and oranges in that case, and it's not possible to compare them. So if you're working with someone and they want you to, introduce a new idea, if they can't articulate the hypothesis, you're going to have a hard time designing an A/B test. The next thing then is, how do I take those ideas and work out what I'm going to build first? Okay, so very simply here, we just put, say, cost or effort against value, and then we just start mapping everything. And you can see here there's kind of 4 different quadrants here of like high cost, low value, and then low cost, high value. So obviously, ideally, you want to start with stuff that's low cost and high value. That's like the, easy things to pick from the tree or whatever that we want to build first. So important thing about value is obviously different to different customers. Like some customers might have massive, costs, and all they want to do is reduce costs, and that's the value to them. Others care a lot about customer satisfaction. That's super valuable to them in that case. And cost and effort obviously is like, what's the effort to build this particular thing, or if there's any additional costs here. So for example, paid media campaigns have a lot of additional costs potentially. And once we have all this, then we can pick out and make up our backlog basically. So here what we're going to do is we're just going to start with our recent search banner. Okay, so the first thing we're going to build with this particular customer. Now that we've decided that, we're actually ready to enter the build phase. Okay, so the build phase starts like this. We have our existing website that I showed you at the start, and what we're going to do is we're just going to change that whole home page banner to show whatever that customer's recent search was. Okay, so super simple. Whatever the last thing they looked at, we're just going to show that on the home page and have some text there as well. That's how we're going to start. Now, I'm going to show you how we set this up in Sitecore Personalize. Okay, so just bearing in mind that we're starting with a use case of what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to build a recent search banner. We're doing that because we think it will increase conversions because people will basically be able to find what they're looking for. That's the goal here as well. And we're doing that on the home page as well. So there's a couple of different sections here. And when I run through like how this is basically can be built using this product, I'm going to be making heavy use of templates. So if anyone's interested in like behind the scenes how all of this works, I can absolutely answer any of those questions if you're interested, but it's not the focus of my presentation here, so I won't be diving into it in too much detail. But basically there's kind of 5 different sections. The first is your variants, so this is where you set up whatever your content is going to be, and then there you can do your traffic split as well. Then there's page targeting. So an important thing about Sitecore Personalize is, by default, Sitecore Personalize runs on every single page of the website. Okay, so you have to basically specify what page you want to run it on. If you want only to run on one page, let's say, in our case, the home page. Then there's the audience. This is who is going to be targeted for this experience. Then there's decisioning. This is what they're going to be shown. So we're running through like decisioning logic to work out what is the best thing to show them. And then there's goals. So in our case, we already know we're looking at increased conversions. So to start off here then, what's happening is I can just start adding in here. I'm just going to copy over the original. I'm just going to add in here my recent search banner. Okay, so obviously in real life, this will have a lot more detail involved, which I can explain. And then here I'm going to split my traffic just 50-50 between both of these. I'm just going to distribute equally between my variant and my control group. Then I'm going to have my page targeting for my home page, so I want to be my home page. Then I'm going to have my audience here. So my audience is just going to be a real-time audience that I've already set up again with a template for anyone that has recent searches. Then I'm going to add in my decisioning, like what am I going to show. Again, I'm making use of what I've already built here, so I'm making use of basically getting the user's recent search. So most of what's happening on the scenes there is JavaScript that I've set up to use this, but this is basically how a marketeer would set this up. A lot of these things are already in place, and they can set this all up whatever way they want. So each of those different sections then that we've set up here is we have traffic allocation, where we split 50-50. We have page targeting, which is a guest on the home page. We have the audience, which is anyone who has a previous search, basically anyone who's been on the site before. And decisioning to determine whatever the recent search was for that customer, i.e. what are we going to show them. And then finally the goals, which I haven't gone through, but I will go through now in a minute. So if we look then in more detail as to literally what is actually happening, like what is the audience breakdown that's happening inside Sitecore Personalize, we can do that here. So to start off with, this is the whole world as Jewl knows, okay? These couple of people here represent absolutely everybody. And the first thing that we've done is we split the traffic 50-50. Okay, so half the people are going into the control group, half the people are going into the variant group. And the variant group is our recent search banner. Okay. The next thing then is page targeting. So here we're just targeting guests that are on the home page. So again, it's another subset of visitors here, so it's just those people. Then what we're doing is we're looking at guests who only have previous searches, again, another subset. And then finally we're doing decisioning. We're working out, okay, what was their recent search here? So for the control group, we don't do anything. We just show them the original home page, that's what they're going to see. Then for the variant group, there's one set of people who their recent search is, say, this feather necklace. Another group who their recent search is a classic pearl. And this group who their recent search is the earrings. These are all, in the terminology of Sitecore Personalize, the same variant, okay? So the control group is I didn't do anything. The variant is I built a recent search banner. It's not what version of the page they see. The version of the page is personalized, okay? And the main question that we're answering by setting it up like this is not, did feather necklace outperform classic pearl? That's not what we're interested in. What we're interested in is, did recent search banner outperform when we didn't do anything? What was the increase in value by me literally creating the recent search banner? So that's what ultimately is being measured as well at the end. So you can see here there's obviously going to be a number of different versions of the page depending on what the recent search was for that customer. It's obviously being dynamically created then using our experiences. Okay, so next to talk about goals and how goals are set up. So to start off with, there's three main different types of goals. There's revenue-based goals, there's page view goals, which are based on, literally going to a different page, that might be what you want to achieve. And the last thing then is custom goals. So when you have the Sitecore CDP and personalized JavaScript library running on a customer's website, it can be if the customer just has CDP or just has personalized or has both, it's the same library. When they're running that on the page, we're capturing all the behavioral information about that customer, and basically any events that we capture, we can then use to set up as a goal as well. So it'll make more sense when I run through this. So when I have my goals here, the first goal here for me is going to be that conversions per session. Okay, that's what I mentioned is the main thing that I'm trying to achieve here. So I've got my conversions per session. I'm going to save this here as well. This is now my primary goal. I'm then going to set up another goal, which is just going to be here total revenue. So what I'm interested in is just, okay, that's great, they converted, but what was the actual value of that in total? So I'm going to set this up as total revenue. That's going to be a continuous goal. The next thing then I'm going to set up is going to be a page view goal. So I'm just going to check how many people did end up on that product details page. Okay, so I'm going to put this in here too. I'm just going to set up whatever the page name is as well and save that. And then my final goal is going to be one of these custom goals. Okay, so I made it sound complicated. It's not complicated. It's just going to be here click-through rate. So I'm just going to add a button on the page. When they click that button, that then's going to be our custom goal. So we're just measuring the click-through rate on that particular banner at the top. This is again to be measured per session. So now I've set up all my different goals. So a couple of different concepts that I kind of ran through in that video. One is the difference between primary goals versus secondary goals. Primary goals are what you're going to call your experiment on. So whether your A/B test was successful or not is driven based on your primary goals. Okay, the main thing we care about is conversions. The rest of the goals are just helpful later on to understand what actually happened when you ran that experiment or that A/B test. The other things that I talked about were one, binary versus continuous. So obviously binary in the case of conversions is it happened or it didn't happen, like a conversion happened or it didn't happen. And the second thing is continuous. In our case, it was total revenue. So this is obviously the actual value is important, not just yes or no. Actual value of revenue is what we care about. The other thing then was per session or per guest. So you can measure things per session, as in did it happen in the session or not, or did it happen for a guest or not. So an example of this for conversions would be, say we had one customer visit the site 2 different times, and one time they bought something, and one time they didn't buy something, then if you're measuring per sessions, the number's going to be 2. If you're measuring per guest, the number's going to be 1. So depending on whatever you're interested in measuring, you may want to set this up differently. For example, logins or sign-ups, maybe you just care about it per guest. Actually interesting to you. Okay, so the next thing that's really important before we move on to the measurement phase is what is success going to look like for us? So before we even start measuring, we need to understand when we finish our A/B test, is 1% going to be successful? Is 0.1% going to be successful? Is 10% going to be success? How do I know I've actually had a good A/B test result? So just reminding ourselves again, we're building as a recent search banner, and what we're trying to achieve here is an increase in conversions. The first thing we do is we just take a look at what does the world look like at the moment? How does it stand right now? So right now we have in our kind of control group or as is or our baseline, whatever you want to call it, is we have about 8.5k visitors on the homepage every day. About 13% of those convert. That's about 1.1k conversions, and that correlates to about 171k revenue. Okay, revenue for that is obviously based on that average order value that I have up on the top right there, and obviously that simple formula there just for calculating revenue. So now, what do I want to get on this pink side? Okay, what do I want to get on my actual variant that I've introduced here in my recent search banner? So I can start here with what does it cost me to build this and how much I want to get for my return of investment. So here we might say we want to get a return of investment of 3x of the cost, which is about 32 million per annum. So this could include your license cost, your cost to build. This is just an example, but it could be your license cost, your cost to build, cost of stakeholders, whatever can be baked in there. So in this case, that pops out with a value of, we want an increase of 9k every single day. Okay, so we're going from 171 to 180 in terms of what we want here in revenue. And what that correlates to then is about that many conversions, 1159, and a conversion rate of 13.7%. So we're going from 13% to just 13.7. But you can see here, that's going to be 3.2 million per annum, just with an average order value of 155 for that jewelry company. What that means is that's a relative uplift of 5%. So I mentioned relative uplift earlier, and you'll see then later why it's relevant as well. So 5% of 13% is 0.7, and that's how we're getting to that value. Okay, so now we're ready to move into the measure phase. So now everything's up and running, and we're going to start measuring how everything's actually performing. So this is what the actual performance page looks like inside Sitecore Personalize. So a couple of different interesting things here to call out. First of all, you can see in this kind of graph here that what's being measured is conversion. So this is the percentage conversions in the control group versus the variant group. So this is what we're actually going to call the overall experiment on. This is what we've measured what successful looked like, etc., etc. You can see the other goals that we've set up here as well in that table. So you can see, for example, with total revenue, we've gone from 77 to 83, which is great. Here for click-through rate per session, this is actually only relevant for our variant group. So we have 0 in our control group, and we have whatever 27% in our variant group. But it still might be interesting to us to measure that. So even though it's not comparable, we're not calling our experiment on it. It might just be an interesting value. And the last thing here is views on our product details page. Okay, so all these different things are being measured. So this is great. We have all these results coming in, and then what happens is it gets to day 2. So day 2, everything looks completely different. Okay, now our control group is outperforming our variant group here. Okay, this is not the results that we wanted. It's not looking the way we wanted it to happen. What are you going to do? This starts to beg the question, okay, when do you stop running an A/B test? So how do you know if it's going to be next week, 2 weeks from now? When do you stop running it? And the way we actually answer that is using something called statistical significance. And at the top here, what you'll see, what I've hidden from you, what's normally on this page, is this little piece of text here saying, your test is still running, the minimum number of sessions has not been reached yet. Okay? Where does this value actually come from? Like, how do we know the test isn't complete yet? What's that based on? So, first of all, as I mentioned, it's based on statistical significance. What that is it's just a measure of, making sure something's likely to be due to a cause and not randomly occurring. So we're trying to measure that it is actually due to our recent search banner and it hasn't just happened randomly. And that's what statistical significance is. Inside the platform then, hopefully you can see that, there's a calculator, and the calculator basically has 3 different inputs, and this then is used to output what your required sessions per variant is. So the first input is your base rate here. So your base rate is just the baseline, whatever the business as usual value is. In our case, that is, what is conversion? What is our percentage conversions on, our homepage? That's all we want to answer here. The next thing is our minimum detectable difference. This is our relative uplift. Okay, this is the same thing as relative that I'm talking about the whole time. Then there's confidence level. So the confidence level is the acceptable false positive rate, or how repeatable you want your experiment to be. So say if it's 95%, it means if you ran your test 100 times, 95 times you would get the same result, and 5 times you would get a different result. And then all of that then pops out what our required sessions per variant is going to be, and this is the value to reach statistical significance. So it's not always the same value, it depends on these input values that you're putting in here. This is the actual formula this is based on, if anyone's interested. Basically, all those values, confidence levels going in, and the squared standard deviation between the base rate and the rate of variance is also relevant here. This is also in our documentation if anyone's interested. I'm not going to dive into this in too much detail. But to explain it on kind of a high level, I don't get very good at that. To explain it on a kind of high level, this is what's happening, okay? It's taking your base conversion rate and your minimum detectable difference, and it's basically saying, okay, how large is the change we're expecting to happen? And the larger the change, the less likely that is to be influenced by randomness or anything happening by chance. And the smaller that value is, the more likely it is to be influenced by random chance. Okay? So if I put a few examples in here that are real examples from the calculator if you use them. The first one here is, let's say we have a base rate of 20%. So 20% of people on the homepage are converting. And let's say we want to get a relative uplift or minimum detectable difference of 50%. This means we want to go from 20% to 30%, right? That's what we're expecting to happen at the end of our A/B test. What we need for this is 294 sessions per variant. Okay? It's pretty small. Then let's say we move over and we say, okay, now we'll say our base rate is actually 6%, and we're going to have again the same uplift. This then correlates to 3% uplift, so we're going from 6% to 9%. This requires 1,200 sessions per variant. And then if we look at both things are small, okay, so say we have a base rate of 6%, and we're only looking for a change of 1%, a minimum detectable difference of 1% between those. The uplift we're actually trying to measure is 0.06%. We're trying to go from 6% to 0.06%. This will take 2.4 million sessions per variant to prove that, okay, because it's a very, very small change that we're trying to measure. So now that we know all that, we can actually start plugging these values into the product. This is what the details page looks like of the product. Is in between that build page I showed you earlier and that performance page as well. And here basically it's just a calculator. You can just input those values and it'll pop out with the number that you need. So our values are based on that same exercise we did earlier of what does success look like. So working backwards from what kind of return on investments we want to get, what kind of costs do we have, we can then plug in what should the base rate be and what's the relative minimum detectable difference or relative uplift that we're expecting here. And that then pops out with about 43,000 sessions per variant. Okay, we know the number of people that are visiting the homepage every single day. It's about 8K, and we're looking for about 43,000. So it's going to take us about 10, 11 days to reach that number. We can also predict how long our A/B test is going to work for. Okay, so we check back in on day 7, and everything's looking really good. We're on 47,000 sessions in total, and we're about halfway there in terms of each of those different control and variant of what we need to reach. So now we know we actually haven't reached it, but we're not going to reach it in 11 days, we're going to be 14 days. We're going to wait 14 days to see our results here. So we reach 14 days, but there's a problem, okay? The test is complete, but there's no winner because we didn't reach the uplift that we expected. So we expected to go to 13.7% uplift. We only got to 13.23, okay? So now, our executive sponsor is asking us, okay, well, what do we do now? We didn't get the results we wanted, we're running this for 14 days, what happens? Well, that leads us on to the learn phase, okay? So obviously, as I mentioned, every time we run an A/B test, it's not like we get those perfect results out. This learn phase is very important in terms of understanding what actually happened and going on to build the next thing. So these are some dashboards that are available basically as live experience dashboards when you're inside this learn phase. So the first one here is showing you goal performance. So it's showing you conversions, average order value, and revenue, basically based on different conversion attribution windows. So, you know, after someone went and saw that homepage, maybe they only converted 3 days later. So that could be interesting to us to look at that and understand those results. We can also see on a day-by-day basis what was happening. So, for example, say Valentine's Day happened in the middle of our experiment and suddenly loads of people were buying everything and completely skewed our results. We'd be able to see this and maybe then bake that into the next time we run our A/B test. The other dashboard then on the right is the offer performance dashboard. This just shows us the distribution of what we actually show to different customers. So how many times did we show the diamond necklace, the glass of pearl, etc., etc. This is another dashboard that we should be releasing in the next couple of weeks. This is our A/B test kind of details dashboard, and what it does is it just kind of shows you different things that we actually didn't measure as goals. For example, average session duration, average frequency, average searches, average views, things like this. And it tells you what the numbers were between your control group and your variant group, and basically was there statistical significant value between those two? What was the likelihood that chance had a play there, or was it actually a statistically significant uplift between those two values? And that can also help you to understand and deep dive on your results. Another thing you can do is, say you're working with a customer that also has CDP, you can also make use of the CDP data lake export. So if it's a customer that's personalized in CDP, they'll access this feature. And the way it works is all of the data that we're putting into Sitecore CDP, including like all that behavioral data that I mentioned earlier, any additional data that we're importing as well, and anything that's happening in those experiences or those A/B tests is all being fed into this data lake. That's accessible via an Amazon S3 bucket and Parquet file format. And there's a number of different things you can do with this. What we're talking about is advanced performance measurements, maybe diving a bit deeper into results. You can also connect this to additional data sources. Like, I don't know if there's like an email service provider that your customers are using and you want to link everything together. or if you want to do roadmap development or build AI models or do business intelligence reporting or anything like that. And if I were you, if I was working with a customer that was using Sitecore CDP, I would get access to data lake. It's just very convenient to look at things as well. So what's happening in our case? Okay, these are our kind of 6 different products that were applicable for us here. So we have this pearl necklace, these night spire earrings, our vintage emerald ring, our earbud earrings, our diamond necklace, and our feather necklace. So the first thing we'll do is we'll just work out, okay, what was the distribution of different ones that we showed to people, and out of those, how many people actually bought something. So when we do this, we find there's clearly 2 standout values here. There is our classic pearl, which basically was shown to 20% of people, but only 8% of those were converting, and our diamond necklace was shown to 22% of people, but only 5% of those actually converting. So we might dive a little bit deeper here and understand what's happening in those 2 cases. And what we find is, a high number of the customers looking at those also looked at multiple different things. And also, a lot of them spent a very short amount of time on that page, let's say. They spent less than 1 minute on the page. So this might beg the question, okay, maybe we should ignore those values from our logic. Maybe we should ignore anything where it's less than 1 minute on that page and exclude them from our logic. So we're going to iterate now on the way that we built that decision model, that decisioning engine, to exclude now those 2 things. So what's happening is a lot of customers might like looking at these high ticket items like the diamond necklace and the classic pearl. Not a lot of people are buying them. Okay, so we're just taking account of that too. Another thing you might have learned as part of this as well is, okay, how do we get people to buy the diamond necklace and the classic pearl? Maybe we need like, I don't know, payment plan options or to build in loyalty information in there as well. So you can see how by running one A/B test, you're learning a lot. We might want to bake it into your next A/B test as well. Okay, so now what do? We start build all over again, now with our new iteration on our decision model that we're going to build now. But we start, and there's a problem. During that time, when we were doing all of that, measuring and learning and trying to interpret all our results, another idea came up that we started to build that we want to run with now, which is the product recommender, the second thing in our backlog. So now there's 2 different things that we want to run at the same time. There's the product recommender that's going to show this just for you on the homepage, and there's our recent search banner, iteration 2, with our new updated logic that we think is going to get us the results that we want. So how do you run multiple A/B tests in Sitecore Personalize? Well, the way that you do it is you do it using advanced traffic allocation. Okay, so when you are loading the Sitecore Personalize JavaScript library on a customer's website, all customers are being placed into one of 120 buckets automatically, okay? And the reason that we have these buckets is to basically give you greater control when you want to dictate who is going to go into what A/B test or who's going to be in the control group or whatever else you want to control here. So say I start updating this here, you can see I can reduce the number of overall buckets that I'm using to say just be half. And then what I can do is I can update this to say, okay, for my control group, I'm going to use buckets 1 to 30, and for my variant group, I'm going to use 31, say, to 60. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, don't use 50-50, don't split it 50-50, actually split it 25-25, but I'm not only saying that as well, I'm also saying, don't just use any 25%, make sure you use a different 25% than what the other A/B test is using, and I'll explain that more in the following slide. But you can also see here as well, when we've done that update, our main build page has now updated to basically have those new values. So it's showing us there now that we're using buckets instead of just using random percentages or like fixed percentages, but not using buckets or advanced traffic allocation. So this time, if we do the audience breakdown, what's actually happening here? What's happening between our 2 different A/B tests? So as I mentioned, it's now being split in 4, okay? And it's very, very controlled. We know, for example, that however many customers are represented here by person 9, they are always going to be in the control group of the recent search banner, okay? Because that's how we've controlled that using those buckets, using advanced traffic allocation. So once we've done this and our customers are split up, we can then do then is we can go and, as part of the same process, do page targeting. So we're just going to target customers then that are on the home page for both of these. For one of these, the audience is going to be all the guests. For the other, maybe the audience is going to be the recent searches again, same as we had last time. Then we're going to do decisioning. So decisioning for our product recommender is obviously going to decide what is the recommended product for this particular customer. And the decisioning for the recent search banner, iteration 2, is again going to be what is their recent search with our updated logic, okay? So the first group of people are going to see the normal homepage, okay? They're in the control group. The next group of the product recommender are maybe going to be recommended that classic pearl necklace again, and then these people are going to be recommended the earrings. So you can see again, they are part of the same variant. The product recommender is the variant, but they are being shown different things based on them, based on personalization for them individually. Then again, we're going to have another control group for our recent search banner iteration 2, and then we're going to have 2 different recent search banners, or multiple different recent search banners, depending on whatever their recent search was, okay, with that updated logic. So you can imagine here now, there's a lot of different home pages that can be shown based on who the customer is, what bucket they're falling into, and then on top of that as well, what kind of personalization are we showing for them individually. Okay, so we set all this up and we're happy. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure again. So we measure again, and what happens is after we measure, we find that it's fantastic. We have the uplift that we wanted. We finally have about 9% uplift. And there's a couple of other interesting things about this as well. One is that we can see here that rather than running for 14 days, this is actually running for 28 days this time. This is again because it's only 25% of the traffic and 25% of the traffic are going into this A/B test. So it's taking longer for that to complete, but we did get the result that we want, okay? So hopefully now we do have a happy customer. But no, actually we still don't have a happy customer, okay? So happy customer now, the customer is now telling us that basically, you're telling me for 28 days we've been losing out on 9% uplift for 75% of my traffic. So how do we overcome this problem? And what exactly are they talking about? Okay, what they're talking about is this graph at the top here, what it's showing us is, it's showing us the conversion rate over time. And as you can see, this is normalizing to certain values. So it's normalizing to about 14% here for our variant group, and then about 13% here for our control group. And that's happening after about 7 days. But we just have to wait all this time for statistical significance to complete, even though we can see pretty quickly what's happening. At the bottom here, you can see what our traffic split is, okay? It's 25% the whole way along until the last day when we switch on 100% here for our variant group. So this isn't optimal. So what can we do basically to overcome this? Well, what we can do is we can use our product called Multi-Arm Bandit, or MAB, to use this as well. So what this does is it automatically allocates the traffic over time, okay? So what you can see here in this bottom right graph is the traffic is starting off on 50-50 for both of those 2 different variants. And at the start, there's a lot of oscillation happening, okay? As there's different results coming in, nothing certain, traffic is being pushed to both of those 2 different variants. So they're starting at 50-50 and they're changing a lot. And then over time, they're going to 100% of traffic is being pushed into that variant group, and 0% then is going into that control group. So the traffic is being allocated automatically using reinforcement machine learning, basically. Based on those conversions, based on that goal that I set up, it's pushing traffic into one of those 2 channels. So I don't have to say, you know, what my traffic allocation is going to be, what I want my split to be. It's going to be automatically determined here. And you can just flip this on using this, optimize this A/B test button here, and you can just select yes, and this will basically run. As you can see, this is currently in beta. We're currently live testing this particular feature, but you know, there will be a general release very soon. I don't know exactly when, probably in the summer, but you can still turn this on if you want to use it and A/B test it in production too. Obviously, we want to run a lot of tests because it's a machine learning reinforcement, machine learning algorithm here. Okay, so now we've done all of this. We've gone through our build phase, we've measured it, we've learned it, we've done our iteration 2, gotten the results that we want. So now hopefully we have a happy customer, and we do. Okay. So that's all from me. Thanks very much. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me in any of these channels. I'm not like everyone else on Twitter, so it'll have to either be on the Slack or on Stack Exchange as well. Thank you very much.
Anyone who has questions?
Don't have to speak as loud now. Do you often find that the clients move from experiences into experiments very quickly in that process because they find it's just more valuable to be testing, you know, almost from the get-go?
Actually, no. So say, for example, like we go through that very early process where customers, I don't know, they have a bunch of ideas they want to build. The first one we'd often A/B test. And the reason for that is it's very beneficial to be able to say to a customer you're working with, okay, because you worked with us, you're now, 1% uplift in conversions. This is how much you've already gained in value because you worked with us, because you built this particular thing. And often, I think what comes back from people when they're doing A/B testing is it's really expensive to hire someone to think about this different stuff and, sit down and analyze everything. Well, you can bake that all into those costs, and we can try and prove if we're actually getting this value. like a lot of, I say the majority of companies now are running a lot of A/B testing, like very successful ones. So it's kind of no longer optional. It's very much business as usual for a lot of these big customers. And yeah, I know a lot of customers that use Sitecore Personalize do really use it, and they really do use it from day one. That's how they're reaching 15 A/B tests in 12 months. You know what I mean? That's how they reach that number. Any other questions?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for the good talk. I have one question, might not be entirely relevant, but when you want to promote such a thing to a client, they have to start from somewhere. And obviously now you had some data previously there that you could say now, okay, now we want to uplift it to a certain person. But how can you like bring in a customer and tell them, I'm going to uplift it, and still you don't have the base data? How do you start with that?
Yeah, good question. So the base data that we need to understand, like, what do we want to make the uplift, it's pretty, to start off with, often we can get it, because the data is pretty straightforward. It's just how many visitors you have on your page every day, and what's the conversion value. And most customers probably know, though, that information. If we don't know that information, though, you could just leave those values as the default. But the default, if you don't touch that calculator, if you leave that to like run in Sitecore Personalize, is very long. I think the default is something like 200,000 sessions per variant. So often if customers aren't, if you're running an A/B test and customers aren't engaging with us, it just means it's going to run for a very long time. Okay, so usually on the second time, they kind of realize it's to their benefit to interact with us, or maybe at that point we have the data and we no longer need to kind of ask them what they think about that. If you're talking about like literally day one, you know, how are we selling this into the customer? How are we getting to run A/B tests? For us, it is often the similar answer that I just gave. It is, okay, you know, you've bought this product. Now we need to prove it has had value. You know what I mean? And the only way to do that is to run A/B tests. And setting up an A/B test is exactly the same as running an experiment or running an experience, that's not an A/B test. The only difference is you're literally just allocating that traffic. Like the setup in terms of Sitecore Personalize, what I ran through there in that short video, exactly the same. So it's not like there's a huge amount of extra complexity. It's customer buy-in, and it's those couple of figures, and you can set up an A/B test.
All right, thanks. One more question.
Yeah.
Usually our start point is from Google Analytic data.
Yeah.
Do you think starting with that and then later comparing to the figure that we're going to get from Personalize, is it a good idea, or we might have surprises there?
No, you shouldn't have surprises there. We have a lot of customers that do that. You know, a lot of people use Google Analytics. So like our major customers, I was mentioning that a 50 plus A/B test running, they're definitely comparing what we have to Google Analytics. Yeah, we don't have problems generally with that. Our platform also works very well with like GTM and stuff like that. If they don't want to add an additional tag to their site and they already have something like Google Tag Manager, we can literally kind of piggy off the back of that. So if they're sending in tags for Google Tag Manager, those can then trigger an event inside Google Tag Manager to send our events too. So we do work well with those systems. And you can also have events being sent from our experiences that also are for Google Analytics. So we can then pass back information about our experiments there. So I'd say most customers use Google Analytics, right? So we work a lot with it.
Perfect, thank you.
When we use multiple experiments, as you said, we can lose some persons. Yes, and when we use multi-armed bandits, and for example, we also run many experiences, how it improves in usage of honest numbers.
So I think the question was if we're running multi-armed bandit and then also running multiple other tests at the same time. Is that right? Okay, so with multi-armed bandit, we can also change the overall traffic allocation that's happening there. So we can do that and measure that. We haven't got that same advanced traffic allocation. So sometimes we might be running, you mightn't have that same level of control basically if you're running multi-armed bandit. You wouldn't be able to go in and say, I want bucket 1 to run multi-armed bandit. Multi-armed bandit, that machine learning algorithm is running on basically all the traffic that's there. So it is kind of one or the other, I guess. Does that make sense?
When we use multi-armed bandits, we don't have any error in statistical numbers. Yes?
Oh, that's why it's in beta. We're currently testing it in production. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. About the current errors that we have or anything like that. Sorry, I don't know.